Well, hello, everybody. Welcome again to another Snap No Tap podcast. Tony Cicchini here. We got the one and only Joe Cardinal and Martin Witkowski. And we were waiting on our special guest to arrive, and he may arrive. He's running late, but of course he's in another country, so it may take him a while to get here, so to speak. But outside of that, it's a balmy 42 degrees Fahrenheit this morning here. It just warmed up. It was 39 shortly ago. What's up, gentlemen? How's it going, Giuseppe?
I'm doing good, Coach. Yeah, I'm getting used to the cold weather. Starting to get, I think it's really fall now. I don't think we're going to have any more 80-degree days. Those days are behind us.
Yeah. How are you doing, Martin?
I'm doing well, but I'm dealing with some technical difficulties. Stuff at my house is just falling apart. It has been 10 years or actually 12 years since I moved in here, and things that have been made in China are just no longer keeping up.
Yeah, that's speaking of made in China, I got to tell you guys something. I'm a little bit older than both of you. When I was really little, we're talking single digits, 8, 7, 8, 9, whatever. If somebody had something that was made in China, it was like a big thing. It was like, wow, this is quality stuff. Because back in those days, it was probably some exotic furniture, like a cabinet. Like I had a great cousin who I always used to call uncle because he was like my grandmother's age. He had this beautiful curio cabinet. I got one similar, but his was really nice from China, and he paid a lot of money back then. So yeah, there was a time that I can remember that if you had something from China, that meant it was worth a lot of money. Something happened along the way.
Well, I think it's actually kind of designed to be all falling apart, because I think a lot of the, at least in my case, this is appliances. They've all been bought out by Chinese manufacturers. And what they do when they try to increase their profit margin. So obviously the actual design as it was has been now modified to be more profitable and cheaper. So it's just no longer as long lasting as was originally intended to be. I think the last one that got sold was Maytag, and even that's now made abroad, even though they still charge more money for it.
Huh. Yeah, they say that we live in a disposable society. I was always into electronics as a kid, as a young boy. And as I got older, we went to a special high school where that's what we had. We had 6 periods a day of theory and shop, 3 of theory, 3 of shop. First 10th grade was basic electronics, tubes, transistors, and so on, television repair. Ultimately was computer repair, 11th and 12th grade. And that was the thing, repair. We fixed things. You fixed your radio. You fixed the television. The repairman would come out to the house, this and that. I have a friend, well, he just retired and moved to Michigan, but Carl, that he did repairs still on stuff, but he got his career started at working for Sears, and then he went independent. But yeah, we don't fix things, Martin. You're right. There's a short lifespan on these things, and we throw them out and get a new one.
Right,
Well,
and it's
quite often
kind
it's cheaper to, the cost to repair is almost the same as replacing it. or at least
Yeah, well, see, in electronics, I came around at the wrong time. 10 years earlier would have been something, but even by the time we got out of high school, it started to be, because we could diagnose and troubleshoot down to the board level. But by that, I mean, again, it was just swapping out panels. That's what it really boiled down to. And you're right. I mean, while in that instance, you weren't replacing the whole unit, let's say, you're replacing this panel. You know, you understand, okay, it's in the audio amp section. Let's get rid of that, put a new one in, as opposed to going all the way down to, okay, it's the transistor or, you know, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. There is a lot of, I mean, a lot of junk. We all have it. There's really almost no way to, you know, to get away from it unless you go to a specialty shop, and you're going to be paying a hell of a lot of money. I was always into, until my hearing went really like gone, I was an audiophile guy. You know, I used to get into all of that. And then I started to realize, yeah, you know, these expensive pieces of equipment, they break down too. So you know, why spend quadruple the price for something that's not going to last quadruple the time?
I think with the audio equipment, there's also some people, at least people claim that there's intangible qualities to the sound that some of it produces. So there is some pieces that are almost like artifacts, like people treasure them because they no longer get made, but they produce this kind of a tonality that they claim is unmatched. I know my friend has some kind of a mixing board that he's completely in love with, and he'll never let it go, even though it's like over 20 years old. He's on, you know, message boards, people trying to find parts and tune it because it's well out of manufacturing.
He's right in certain things, like tube amplifiers are always going to be a little better. Records are better than, you know, CDs and MP3s, of course. You know, they can test this on scopes, and you could see the dynamic range. But when you get to, like me with the hearing loss, it's irrelevant. There's no point in that anymore. So yeah, there is truth to that without a doubt. But now, let's take the best television from 1970, whatever. I mean, the technology has just progressed so much nowadays with, you know, 4K and subsets of that, and who knows what's next, 6K, 8K. Yeah, so I get that. You know, technology has, you know, really, like automobiles, you know, these cars nowadays, these new cars, sports cars, Mustang, hot rods, whatever. You know, the cars from the 60s and whatever, those muscle cars, you can't compare them to the new cars. There's no comparison.
What was your favorite?
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just going to segue into cars. You know, like as far as manufacturers, what manufacturers of cars do you go for, Tony? What do you like?
Well, growing up, I was always a Chevy guy, you know, but nowadays, like Ford, the only car that they're going to, I think, is they're going to make the Mustang, but they're really into trucks and SUVs. And ironically, I mean, I got two old cars, you know, I got a Lincoln that's a 98, and I got a Ford Mustang that's a 2000, that I kind of restored both of these cars. I don't have a new car. I haven't had a new car well, I've never actually owned a new car. Well, actually, I take that back. When I moved to Chicago, I leased a pickup truck. That was in 1987. But I've never owned a new vehicle. You know, just used cars, but I've had a plethora of cars. There's good and bad, you know, in all things. I really miss the Jeep Grand Cherokee that I had. You know, if anything, for me, I know SUVs, gas and everything, it's tough, but physically, it's easy for me to get in and out of an SUV. You know, it's hard to get out of these cars because like the Lincoln sits low, the Mustang sits low. It's hard.
It's the same thing when you have kids. Like, I don't think a lot of people with kids have sedans anymore, because then you got to reach in, bend down low,
Ah,
and then getting kids in and out is a big pain.
yeah, that used to be the thing 20 some years ago. If you're driving on the freeway, you see a nice looking woman and she's in an SUV, you know right away, she's got kids. Forget it. You know, she's married. But now SUVs are more common, like the police. The county out here, the sheriffs still have cars, but some municipalities are going straight to the SUV. And while people are, you know, those are expensive. Let's get that straight. Even though police departments get like discounts because they buy fleets, those Crown Victorias that a lot of them are driving, those are not good fuel wise, economically. Believe it or not, the SUVs get better gas mileage. Some SUVs, I'm not just, you know, across the board, but some do actually get better fuel efficiency. And you know, let's face it, we're back to that again, where when I was a kid growing up, it was all about fuel efficiency. And I remember cars in the 70s seemed to get great gas mileage there for a while, you know, 40 and 50 miles per gallon for some of those Hondas and whatever, those imports, you know. And then when gas came down and speed limits went back up again, which is okay, I get that. You got to, you know, speed limits, you can't be crawling around, especially now in this traffic. You'll never get where you need to get to. Yeah, it's you know, but bottom line is fuel prices, they play a role.
It is amazing how predominant trucks are now. You know, that, like you said, Ford's, I think they're, yeah, mostly making trucks and pickup trucks and things like that. That's probably, you'd think, because it's been, I know we've had, you know, obviously inflation recently, but gas prices haven't been low in a long time, but people are still kind of committed to them, you know. And obviously a lot of people need them for work, but there's a lot of people who don't. You know, I know people who just commute to a desk job, you know, in an F-150. I don't get it, but
yeah, gas has always been high, except during the pandemic, and people are throwing that up now. Oh, gas was so cheap. Well, everything was closed. Nobody was going anywhere. That's why it dropped. But you're right. The problem is when you're behind a pickup truck or a truck, you can't see the road ahead of you. It wasn't so much an issue when I lived in Chicago because there was more cars. But again, that's 8 years ago, 8.5 years ago. But there's cars, and I was always on site, you know, like the streets, you know, they're not wide, except maybe Irving Park or something like that. Then you got the buildings that are really close to you. So you can kind of gauge what's going on. But when you're out here in the sticks, you know, you get behind a truck, a pickup truck even, you know, you can't see what's going on in front of you. You don't know what the holdup is. You don't know if somebody's making a left-hand turn and you need to go around. You know, it's an annoyance for, you know, for being in a passenger vehicle. At least for me, but it's a choice I made. I no longer have that, you know, I'm no longer driving the Jeep. So, you know, it's been a few years since I've driven a Jeep.
That's the other thing that people don't realize is that, you know, if you're living in a big city, there's a lot of roads and a lot of options for you to move around. But I've been stuck on a country road where there was an accident, and I was, you know, stuck behind, like you said, one of those F-150s, big pickup trucks. I had no idea why I was sitting back there for almost 45 minutes. I was waiting for that accident to clear. So, you know, like in a city, you have all these options and things you can do. You can back out, go the other way. On a country road, if there's an accident, there's a car behind you, there's a car in front of you, and you're just stuck and you can't see anything.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, like where I'm at, the closest food is approximately 15 minutes. Now, if you look at it geographically, like from the air, you know, I don't know how far the store is, 3 miles, or it isn't far that way, or it's more than that, but whatever, not much. But getting to it, because you still have these plots out here, these farms. So you don't have a direct shot like you do in a city. You got to go all the way around this way, that way. It's crazy. And yeah, there's people out here that have pickup a lot of trucks, and I can tell you, most of them don't need them. I know this now because we're talking about people that I see all the time, and I've known for years. They don't need these big vehicles. They choose to have them. That's their choice. I don't care. But yeah, it's tough when you're behind them, and you just don't know. Like this happened to me the other day. My roommate took me down to Chicago. Well, technically not Chicago, but the South Side. I had to pick something up, and I told him where the ramp is to get off to hit 294. But before you get to 294 South, there's St. Charles, or there's another exit right before that. Well, he gets over early, like I told him to, because it gets lined up with trucks. Coincidentally, as we're moving along, I get a text. So I look down at my phone and I'm responding to now I'm not driving, mind you, I'm in the passenger seat. So I'm responding to the text. I look up and he's starting to exit, and I see we're right behind this big ass semi. I'm like, no, this isn't it. This isn't the exit. Well, it was the exit. Okay, but that damn semi blocked. I couldn't see the sign. I thought it was because I had lost perception of time here, responding with that text. I thought this was the St. Charles Road exit he was taking. It wasn't. It would have been the correct exit. So we had to stay on 290. I said, you know what? At this point, just take 290 to Harlem. We'll get off on Harlem and we'll go south down Harlem. I says, it'll do me good because I'll get to see stuff on Harlem that, because we were heading south to 95th, Oak Lawn. So I wanted to see what's here, what's not here anymore, because it's been a while since I've gone that far south on Harlem. There's no reason for me to go that far. So yeah, getting stuck behind those vehicles can really be a pain in the ass.
Hey, Tony, do you, we talk about like the perspective that people have on their current situation, and where this connects with cars is like, I watched some video, I think on YouTube, of a guy from like the time when they were just bringing cars in on the roads. And, he was used to riding a horse everywhere. And the way he talked about cars is the way you would talk about a high definition television. Like, yeah, I can have a regular TV, but like a horse. And then there's these other things that are cars that seem to be a little bit better. But there was definitely an impression from him at that time that both are going to exist. That the car is not replacing or supplanting the horse. It's just like another mode of transportation that's now been made available. So like, can you think of some other stuff that's like that? Because, like a human being has a lifespan of only 70 years. So you think whatever you're living at the given moment is going to be forever. And it's kind of like the pinnacle. But the reality is that's changing very quickly.
Well, I had family members that were alive before airplanes. So not only did they see airplanes, they lived to see us landing on the moon. So I would think that's got to be not America, but society's greatest accomplishment, greatest achievement would be that. I mean, that I can think of off the top of my head. But bringing up the horse, I saw a horse the other day. Some guy was riding a horse down a street over here. I don't know if that's, see, and that's kind of like an issue, like where you're in the city, you're not allowed to have a horse or something like that, a mule.
Not anymore, right?
You can't have that. So like,
you can have one goat in Chicago.
Oh, okay. Well, the thing is, like they say, driving is a privilege. It's not a right. Well, I absolutely disagree with that because of what you just said. Well, what are our ultimate, not ultimate, what's
alternative?
Alternative, yeah. What is our alternative? What if okay, let's say public transportation. Well, what if you're where you don't have it? Like out here, there's no public transportation. So you've kind of like restricted. You built society now for like you have to have a vehicle, or you have to have some mechanical means to get from A to B, even if you don't own it. Okay, be it a taxi cab or now Uber or this or that. So yeah, that always kind of, I don't believe that it's a privilege. I think it should be a right, a transfer. The right. It should be our right to have transportation.
To your earlier point about people in your family, my kids, Sasha's grandfather, so my kid's great grandfather, he lived to be 100, and so they got to meet him, and he was sharp even up towards the end, but he literally spanned that in his lifetime. He grew up in a town where there were no cars. They would ride horses into town, and I think eventually his father got the first car, but they had one car at some point. But in his lifetime, they went from no cars all the way up to like the space shuttle, basically. I mean, I can't imagine. In some ways it feels like things have plateaued a little bit. Like there must have, like there's just this explosion of innovation that happened, exponentially, within basically one person's lifespan from, I guess they had trains. So that was probably the big mechanical, transportation thing. But then, to go from to see flight for the first time, something they thought was impossible. And there's always these stories about, how they thought, well, a man could never survive traveling 25 miles per hour. Like they thought their bodies would break down. As cars were hitting certain speeds, they were wondering, what could the human body handle it? And it's just fascinating to see how we really don't have a clue as to how things are going to play out. And, there's always, and people who are upset, like certain types of jobs obviously become obsolete, like there's, how, industries change as a result of that, and people lose their jobs and they can't adapt, so, and they don't see it coming. They'll try and make legislation to prevent that and things like that. So there's like, it is fascinating how we can't really see the writing on the wall, and we have no really way to see how these things will interconnect and bring out new things. But I just wonder if we've kind of hit a wall with certain things. Like
we probably, but to couple what you're saying and getting back to Martin, another thing is reading. Now you have tablets and phones and computers. So like books and newspapers, while they're not obsolete yet, I would assume, maybe not in my lifetime, but I would assume that eventually those that may be obsolete. But I I'm not a futurist. I don't know. But Martin brought up makes you want to think, what are some things that you would think of, Martin? Because like I said, I can think of flight. What do you bring to the table?
So one thing that I asked this a little bit to my dad, and he was saying that when he was growing up, he went to college in the 50s. The textbooks that he was studying physics and mathematics from had radiation as a theory, because it was discovered in like 1910. So before that, you had like the Newtonian physics, all that kind of stuff, and electricity that was well known, it was well documented. But radiation was like a new invention that was still coming on board. And all the things like nuclear power plants that we kind of take for granted right now, they were still very theoretical. And nobody knew that this was going to really go anywhere. Then they made the bomb and all this other stuff, and it's now a real thing. But it was very tenuous. It was an invention and a new concept, and people weren't even thinking in that dimension yet, which ties a little bit to Joe's point. Like, who knows what are the things that right now are just really being slightly discussed that might be a linchpin of society, 150 years from now when we're all dead.
Mathematics and physics. Okay, well, my grandfather was figuring out odds on who's going to win the racehorse, the horse race, 4-1 odds, 5-1. Mathematics and physics your dad studied in the 50s? Wow. That explains you. That explains it all. Okay.
It explains my dad, doesn't explain me.
Oh boy. Well, but we don't know what Joe said. Have we hit the wall? Maybe currently we have for now, that we're aware of. I know that they're working on holograms, and all of that. And I think they have them to an extent. Well, who knows? Who knows what's next? I think the biggest thing that's continuing that doesn't make the news too often is in computing. Okay. quantum computers and so on. I think that we're making progress, continual progress there. But I don't know that there's new inventions per se. There may be, I don't know, is what I'm saying. But I think it's just more efficient, more powerful. And that might open up the next wave of development. But okay, so before all of this, we can talk about the past because we have documented history, you know, when they invented the printing press and then this and that and so on. And then somebody brought up the trains. Okay, so then we had the what they call the Industrial Revolution. So what happened before the Industrial Revolution? Was there a period in human history for a couple centuries where things really didn't progress? I would think yes, right? I mean, they progress minutely, but I don't know. You tell me.
You're talking about like the Dark Ages?
Well, that or in between, you know, the age of, you know, yes. All right, let's say the Dark Ages. Okay. We had buildings. I mean, you had great structures that still stand today. So some of that construction technique was obviously phenomenal, stood the test of time.
Yeah, I think some of this stuff was also maybe being worked on or invented in ways that haven't really been well documented. Like, you know, some of the astronomy that we have today comes from like people just basically staring at the skies in very primitive fashion, but they were able to notice patterns that have been used to build the current theory of astronomics and, you know, the way the universe works. So, you know, to your point, I think that there's like subtle advancement that may not be as documented and as monumental as, you know, the invention of radiation.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense. I also would say that not physics, like they just this week some scientists in space or regarding space, well, I guess it would be physics, astrophysics, pretty much said something about reality and how, without getting into a lengthy thing about it, it ties into ancient philosophy, like, you know, things may not be real if you don't see them, okay? And shit like that, it's all starting to come full circle. So, like, if you go way back in history, like Plato's time and all of, you know, around there, some of these thinkers and their I guess you'd call it metaphysical thinking, may not be so far off. Science is starting to come around to thinking that on a quantum level, there may be some basis in this in these belief systems. Have you guys know what I'm talking about right now? What happened this past week?
No, I didn't know there was some specific discovery that happened this week. Or
well, it's not so much a discovery; it's just a, yeah, we think we've proved it, you know, kind of thing. It was already a theory, and there, you know, I wish we'd have known we were talking about this because I would have, you know, had it handy here. But you know, it's almost like, is the universe a simulation, right? Who knows? I don't really care. I'm not going to worry about it. You know, I mean, it doesn't affect, well, I guess it all affects us, but generally it's not going to affect me on my level here. You know, I still got to do what I got to do every day, regardless of what's going on in, you know, in the universe. But I mean, look at you, Joe. Could it be that you are the pinnacle of human perfection, that it'll never be any better than this?
Well, that's what I was kind of inferring or implying when I said, have we reached our peak, you know, as civilization?
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, and I like that the three of us, as, you know, none of us are scientists or historians, but yet here we are talking about it. I'm taking guesses as to why things happen, but for the listening audience. But yeah, and I think certain times external forces obviously set back human progress, right? We're talking about the Dark Ages, where for political reasons or, you know, environmental reasons, society takes a tumble backwards. It's like, you know, one step forward, two steps back. And so it's not a straight progression, isn't a straight line. You know, it's all over the place. And that happens individually, you know, for individuals' progress, much like myself, and you know, society as a whole. So, I mean, what I say as far as plateauing is that, like, it seems like there's like growth spurts where like all of a sudden there'll be like a huge, you know, advancement, but then we hit that wall. Like we were talking about flight, where we've just hit that, where there's no, it's not cost efficient to like fly, you know, supersonic, let's say, you know, like the Concorde jet that was going to revolutionize travel, but they just couldn't, the cost of it, they could never bring it down, you know. And I know there are a lot of other issues with it, but it's, you know, we've kind of hit that, you know, the speed of planes and things are roughly the same they were as when you and I were kids, at least for travel. Obviously there's, you know, high-end jets and things that they keep getting, but as far as making it available to everybody, or, you know, you mentioned the moonshot. Well, it's like, here we are, how many years later is that? And Mars still seems like impossibly out of reach. You know, they talk and talk about it. I remember, I think during the first, I guess it would be the second Bush presidency, he talked about, you know, briefly talking about doing like a shot to Mars. And then they kind of took him aside and explained to him, you know, that it would cost something like, you know, a third of our GDP. And I can't remember how long of a trip it would be, but they, you know, quietly backed off of that goal. So, you know, it seemed like there were certain things that were attainable, and now it's, you know, it may be a couple hundred years, but who knows? There's probably a lot of small things that are happening that are not making the news, that, you know, average people like yourself and I, it's not percolating up to us that's happening, and that we might reach a tipping point where someone makes a discovery and boom, all of a sudden, you know, we break through. I don't know.
Well, you're onto something there, because, you know, I have some, well, like what hot rods, or like, let's say you have an antique, you have like an accordion. We had Corey Pesaturo on last weekend. You may have this accordion that was your father's or your grandfather's or somebody's, and it's, you know, you think it's valuable, okay, because it's old, all right? And you have this accordion, it needs work. And to get it fixed would be $2,000, $2,500, and they can fix it. So now you put in $2,500 for an accordion that you'll probably be able to sell for $700, $800, because it isn't cost effective to fix it. It's just not. So yeah, you're right. That's how some things are. You know, we could probably accomplish it, but it's either not cost effective, or it would be, you know, far too time consuming, and the payoff in the end just isn't worth it. And I see that happen a lot of times with cars. Obviously, people get, you know, they get these cars, or they buy cars, and they're paying a ridiculous amount of money because the car is old. But I try to tell these people, even when that car was brand new off the factory, it was a piece of shit. Okay. Like a Ford Pinto. Okay. Now, yeah, some people modify it, put, you know, big V8s, but I'm saying, if you're buying a stock Pinto for $14,000, $15,000 today, there's something wrong here, because it was a junker. It wasn't much of a vehicle when it was brand spanking new. So yeah, there's it's nuts, you know. So but people look at things differently. What's one man's garbage is another man's gold, they say. So be it.
Pinto was known for, like, if you tap the back bumper, it would blow up, right? That was always the joke.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then there was something with the Corvairs. You know, Corvairs were, some of them were kind of cool. I actually saw one, or I went and looked at one years ago, convertible Corvair. But once again, you know, it needed work. And at the end of the day, you're still driving around in a, I hate to say it, and I don't mean to offend Corvair owners, but at the end of the day, you're still driving around in a Corvair. You know, it was a 6-cylinder thing. And once everybody got past the, oh, you got a 1966 Corvair. Okay, now what? You know, whereas, you know, like my Lincoln, the Mark 8, it still turns heads and it rides really nice. Okay. And it's got speed. So, you know, it's a cool car. It's a car worth having. And it's a car that actually looks modern, and it had a lot of modern features to it. Same with my Mustang. It's just a 6-cylinder stick shift. It's not built for speed, but I did some mods to the body, made it look real cool, this and that. So it's fine. And I just drive it around. Well, I haven't even driven it in a few months, but just, it's a local car, just from here to there. But yeah, I don't know. Everybody's got their own take on it. But I think television shows too have done a lot of damage, like these antique shows and these pawn shop shows, where it's all like bullshit. Most of it is. I found this thing, it's worth thousands. Now all of a sudden everybody thinks they're going to get all this money for stuff that they have laying around, and it's artificially inflated the value of a lot of things. Have you guys noticed that at all? Because I noticed that, because I have time on my hands.
Well, even more modern, it's like all this craze with cryptocurrency and NFTs. Everybody has their own little piece of garbage that they think somebody else is going to pay millions of dollars for. It's actually known as the bigger idiot theory, right? Like if you have something that's generally worthless, it's actually quite valuable if you can find somebody else that believes that's valuable, right? And the value is completely arbitrary. And therefore television and shows and stuff like that, they force people to think that value of it is, this or that, and higher than it really should be. It's not an efficient market.
Well, there's a chance for me to date again, then, is what you're saying. Okay. Yeah.
You just have to get people to advertise you properly. Tony. That's all it is.
Well, here's on that note, this is, I want to talk about this because, again, I'm homebound. I have time. So I've been just killing time. That's all I'm doing. I've been emailing people that have accordions for sale. And I pretty much ask the same question. I pretty much copy and paste the same question to these people. Very simple, standard question. And you would be surprised how little response I get from, I mean, it's like people, you have shit for sale. And here's a guy, me, they don't know, I'm sending you an email showing interest. And I've kept track of this. I'm getting 10% responses. Okay. This is in a variety of places. This is eBay, Reverb, Craigslist, and personal business, or not personal, but business websites, their actual websites. And I'm getting 10% replies. And this is literally almost like a compulsion now with me. I'm fascinated by the fact that, these people just don't want to respond. What's with that?
Maybe you should look inward for that answer, Tony.
Yeah, maybe I should. Yeah, but I mean, that's insane to me.
Martin, actually, we were talking earlier about kind of future looking and what is the horse and buggy of today. Maybe cryptocurrency, maybe that's the thing we're all missing. Like, to me, it seems ridiculous because I'm old school, right? I need to have money. I trust the dollar, but I'm locked in my ways. That's how I grew up. That's what has value, currency. So every time, I just don't know I wonder what percentage of my generation is adopting it, or, our generation, I should say, or if it's just younger people. We may not see that, maybe by the time, we're about to cash in our chips, so to speak. I mean, that could really revolutionize how society is organized and how it works. I mean, this is money that's not issued by any singular, central government. I can't wrap my head around it. But who knows? That could take off. And right now we're like, well, it's this fringe thing, and it's probably going to fail. Who knows? Maybe we're just lacking that vision, being so growing up the way we did, that we can't see that this is the way things are going to head. Could be.
It doesn't affect me because I I mean, I've seen it crash. I've seen people complain. I don't want to get into it because I don't know enough about it. But you know, there are other ways.
That hasn't stopped us this whole podcast.
Yeah, true. But no, I don't care. I mean, if somebody gets X amount of money, that's great. You know, just make sure that whatever you're creating in the world, something that used to be affordable now becomes so expensive that, you know, percentage wise, you really didn't make a gain. You know, I can remember when I first moved to Chicago in '87, they didn't have the Chicago Accordion Club. All right. Now, this is an important thing because there really wasn't any accordion clubs, not to my knowledge. There may have been some minor things, but I went to the second accordion club meeting they ever had. Because of the Chicago Accordion Club, all of a sudden I noticed accordion prices started to go up. And then this expanded. Now, all of a sudden, Milwaukee's got a club, and this place in that town, all of a sudden everywhere. And accordion prices started to explode, which sounds good for people who are selling accordions. It wasn't so good for people who were buying accordions. And I knew that this is not going to last forever. And it didn't. I mean, it lasted for X amount of years. It wasn't like something that happened only for a month. It lasted quite a few years, 10, 15 years. And then the ridiculous prices started to go away. And now they're down a little bit, but you still have, it's coming up again because other countries are now starting to try to gobble up accordions, and only because of the internet. I see people buying literal junk, absolute junk that honest to God, I'm not exaggerating. If somebody said, "Here, Tony, I want to give this to you," I would say, "I don't want it." Okay, I'm just going to throw it out. And people are paying are paying hundreds, if not upwards of $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 for this accordion that's literally not worth more than $50 to $75. It's just junk. So I feel bad for these people because they're never going to get that back. Okay, they're never unless they find a sucker somewhere. Then you got to live with that fact that, man, you're a chump and you found a bigger chump.
The bigger idiot theory.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, but so we talked about these accordions a little bit before. So the thing that I wanted to ask, and I had this in the back of my head for a while, is there no new accordions being manufactured? Like what I mean by that is, like, is there no new accordion manufacturing technology that would make them like cheaper, like step in and provide the supply to fill the demand that's currently there?
Yes, they are making new accordions, but they're not making them cheaper unless you buy these cheap Chinese imports, which will not last you. The sound quality is horrible, and you know, mechanically they break down. But yes, there are the same, some of the same manufacturers that were around for a long time got bought up by conglomerates, and they are producing accordions. And some of the accordions are very high quality. However, the prices are just enormous. And when I say enormous, in some instances, they exceed the cost of a brand new automobile. Okay. I mean, there's some that are going in the 40s of thousands of dollars. I see one $48,000, slightly used. So like a car with 2,000 miles on it. That's insanity, because accordions, yes, there's a lot of parts to it, and they're far more complex than, let's say, a guitar or a saxophone or something. It's nuts. And in other manufacturers are selling them for like $14,000, $15,000. Again, it's craziness to me. I don't understand it. And I think a lot of it's price gouging. I really do. But to get to your point about modifying or whatever, that's not the word you use. I don't remember the word now, but the big thing in accordions were always, you had three kinds of reeds. Reeds are what's in there that produce the sound. You had machined reeds, which is the lowest level. You had what's called hand finished reeds, which you would take a machine reed and then just finish, already produced by a machine, and then finish it off, tack up the the valve plate and the put the leather tongue on, manually. It's called hand finish or tipo a mano in Italian. And then mano, handmade reeds. So you always wanted to have handmade reeds. All my accordions have handmade reeds. So that was the pinnacle. Now, bear in mind, handmade doesn't always necessarily mean world class. You could have a drunk somewhere hung over could have made your reed, you don't know, especially when you're buying an older accordion. But so you always want to look at quality. However, today, some of the machine reeds can equal some of the handmade reeds of days gone by, because with CNC and all of the other improvements machine technology has made since the 30s, 40s, and 50s, you can get some quality machine reeds. Now, if anything, that should lower the price of the accordion, but they don't look at it that way. There's no such thing as trickle down. It doesn't exist. Okay. If they can make it more cost effective, they're just going to jack their price up. Okay. Normally they're not going to save the consumer any money, especially in something like the accordion where it's a smaller market. Okay. I don't know what they're doing in China. It's exploding in popularity over there, but I don't know what that means. I don't know. What is it? What do you mean by explosion? There was 100 players 10 years ago. Now there's 1,000, or are there hundreds of thousands of players? Okay. I don't know the answer to that. So yeah, there's still accordion manufacturers, predominantly in Italy, of course. But yeah, I've never been there, so I don't know, and I'll never be there for that. I mean, I doubt I'll ever go to Italy. If I do, it wouldn't be because of an accordion. If I end up in Castelfidardo or Stradello where they make them, yeah, I'll stop in at the factories and do a tour. But that's just not on my bucket list. No.
It's really interesting. So there's no like entry level accordion. I wonder if that's like partially.
There are, Joe. There are, but they're junk. They wouldn't last you. Okay, let's put it this way. That used to be one of the big scams. People don't realize this, but in the 50s, 40s and 50s, the accordion was the most popular instrument in the United States of America, more than piano, guitar, all of it. That gradually changed by the 60s. But one of the scams was they get the kid in there with a little 12 bass, little small thing. Oh, now your son's too good. He's got to progress to this accordion and that accordion. Well, my point is, yeah, you can get an entry-level accordion just as you could go to Walmart and get a Casio piece of shit keyboard. But if you're serious about the keyboard, you're going to outgrow that Casio or whatever brand it is. I shouldn't diss on Casio. I have a Casio digital piano. You're going to outgrow that. And you're going to have to spend more money. And it's probably the same in guitars. You're a guitarist. You can get your junker little thing. Then you progress up to whatever you want. But I believe, and you can check this out, like a new Gibson Les Paul guitar. I mean, I'm not talking about something with rhinestones and gold jewelry on it, but they're like $900 to like $2,500 roughly. Okay. You're not going to, and that's quality, man. You're getting a top of the line guitar. You're not going to get a top of the line accordion for $2,500.
Well, that's what it is. It seems like that's the problem. Is like you got your entry level, like the next level up. It sounds like all of a sudden there's a huge leap. Like, like that's the problem, is that it seems like there's no middle tier or like levels of where you can go up, because it seems like that would prevent a lot of people from taking accordion much further than entry. Like, because you're right, there's so many options with guitars. You can go and, pick up $100 starter thing for your kid to start playing. And, eventually you can get them like a $300 or $400 guitar. And then if they're taking it as an adult, they might want to get themselves a special, $2,000 guitar or something at some point. But all those things are, within a average income person, are within reach. But it sounds like the accordion, it's either the junky entry level or like high-end professional. There's not a lot of in between. We're like,
yeah, and then entry level, some of them are tiny accordions. They're small. They're how can I put it? Accordions, a standard accordion has what they call 120 bass buttons. Okay. Yes, I don't want to get too technical, but let's just trust me on this. But they make smaller ones, 12 bass, 48 bass, 72 bass, 96 bass accordions. Okay. So you can't, I mean, the bass side is restrictive enough with 120, let alone with less. So imagine having a guitar, I don't know, with 4 strings, and now you graduate to 5 and 6 and even 7 or 12. It's just kind of ridiculous. Plus, as I said, some of them are small. So either the keys are too tiny, or you have a limited range of notes on the treble side, the right-hand side. So you're limited in what you can play. So yeah, you're going to pay $800-900 for that. No. Now what? You can't even, at least with a guitar, a normal size guitar that you mentioned that you can buy for $100, you have the same range musically as the finest virtuoso on planet Earth playing a guitar. Okay. So yeah, imagine a piano. You're out buying a piano that only has 32 keys on it as opposed to 88. Yeah, it's sad, and I have no one, I tell people there's no one to blame but the accordionists, because they support this stuff. If nobody would buy these smaller accordions, they wouldn't make them.
Maybe there has now been a pinnacle in accordion manufacturing, and there is just no real way of making it cheaper with the existing technology.
Probably. I mean, like a piano, like a guitar. I mean, I'm sure there have been improvements, but I'm not a guitarist. My dad was. I didn't know him that well, so I can't speak on that. I would assume the improvements were probably in the pickups. Maybe, I don't know if the strings got improved. I don't know. But, I mean, it's a block of wood. Okay. And the accordion is like a hollowed out piece of wood, some, plastic or celluloid on the outside, plastic keys. How do you improve on it? I don't know. But yeah, the reeds are the heart and soul of the accordion. And yeah, I just think, yeah, you're right, Martin. You probably reached the pinnacle. There's really not much more you can do except maybe make it look more ornamental. But the accordion's got more problems than just that. I mean, there's no calling for accordion. It's not accepted in the classical world for the most part. Jazz, it's just really not an accepted instrument. And we could have a whole show on that. Nobody wants to hear it, but I mean, the accordion is its own worst enemy. You can point the finger at a lot of people.
If the bagpipes can stay around, the accordion can stay around.
If who? If what?
Bagpipes.
Oh, yeah. So, well, Glenn Campbell played the bagpipes as well. He was a phenomenal guitarist, very underappreciated by the general public because they only thought of him as a country player. He was one of the greatest guitarists that ever lived. Sadly, he passed away from Alzheimer's as well. Not a good thing, but no, but Martin is hitting on something with, I'm here whining about the accordion, but it could happen to you. It could happen to anybody out there that might like something that's niche. Okay. And right now it may be okay. Your niche may be flourishing or surviving, but it doesn't take much for there to be a downturn. And then what? That's the thing. Now what? I remember I had not a friend, but somebody that I knew that was like, he liked bench seats in automobiles. Okay. Now I had a Buick Park Avenue. That was what, a 99, I think it was. I sold it a couple of years ago and it had a bench seat, which was awesome. I loved it, but he actually liked it for medicinal, for health reasons with his wife and she, elderly and so on. Well, you go try to find a new car with a bench seat. I don't think you can. Okay. So this was a niche that, okay, now if he wants a bench seat automobile, well, you got to go used. Well, eventually that's going to dry out. All right. I mean, you're not going to find even a used car with a bench seat that is going to be viable for you. So, you know, if you put your mind to this, you can probably come up with a lot of things that are similar to, you know, oh yeah, I really like this. It's here now, but it may not be here tomorrow. You know what I mean?
I'm also kind of fascinated by what you described as like the market dynamics in the accordion, like the small accordion manufacturing universe, because despite, you know, technologies overall moving forward, the cost of the accordion hasn't been lowered. And the same kind of a problem is being discussed as it pertains to medicine, because surgeries that have been around for, you know, 1,000 years have not gotten cheaper. You can't like go get your leg mended for $500. Nobody's going to talk to you.
Okay.
So why is that, right? Like, why is medicine not more available to everyone? Why is it still such a highly inaccessible service? It kind of dovetails to what you've been talking about with all the various health problems, which, you know, your health problems are not like crazy. They've been around for a while.
Mine, yeah.
Well, that's a very complicated question. I mean, the healthcare market, I mean, people have been trying to solve, you should say specifically the US healthcare market too, because in different countries, obviously, we're kind of unique in how we approach ours, especially in the industrialized world. And we would need experts here to kind of explain it. But I don't think, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are artificial about the way we do business in healthcare. I mean, so often prices are hidden, right? So you don't know how much or how, you know, it's most places when you shop around, you know, and you look for the lowest price, and that forces people to bring prices down. But how often do people do that with their healthcare? You know, like if you've got to get like Tony, like, oh, I got to get a CAT scan or MRI, you find out where the cheapest hospital is, you know, and it's just, yeah, a lot of things. And also the way insurance works. And there's just so much in copyrights work, all these things kind of make the market artificial. So like, and that's why things are where prices should be coming down, because they're almost like commodities now, you know. They can't. And obviously a lot of people profit from the system as it is. And so, I mean, that's a huge societal question. And yeah, I'm sure the experts even argue about that, but that'll be an interesting one. Go ahead.
I want to address this directly. Now, I just brought up the calendar here on the computer. So, because we don't know when people are going to listen or watch this. So today, as we're filming, is October 9th, 2022. So I was scheduled for for a CAT scan October 3rd, Monday, October 3rd, 2022. Just a couple days before, Friday evening, which is now September, I'm looking at the calendar, September 30th, 2022. Now, I had this scheduled for 3 weeks. February 30th or September 30th, about 4 o'clock, 4:30, I get the phone call that my insurance hasn't okayed this CAT scan for Monday morning. I'm like, you're kidding me. What last minute? What? You're kidding me. It's a CAT scan. It's not like brain surgery here. It's a CAT scan. Okay. No, 3 o'clock, I got the phone call that it was canceled. Okay. Come over the weekend, I had noticed that there was a voicemail on a home line that I don't use as home line. I disconnected the home phone service because my mother would make random calls. She didn't know any better. But it gets forwarded. It's part of this Comcast Connect, you know, package deal. So that Sunday, now remember, this is September 30th. So that Sunday, which is the 2nd, I just happened to go online and just check because the Comcast bill's due. And I noticed that there was a voicemail on the home line. I'm like, what's this? And it was a robot call saying that my insurance, blah, 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 was okayed. It was okay. Well, I thought it was a scam. So I waited till Monday, now the 3rd. So everybody's keeping track here. I call my doctor's office. They know nothing about this. This is no, you haven't been approved. Let's transfer you to the hospital financial department. I talk to them again and they're like, no, sorry, it sounds like a scam. You have not been approved. Okay. That's Monday the 3rd. Wednesday the 5th, I get a letter in the mail from my insurance company saying, I'm approved. Now, am I? I don't know. But they had tentatively rescheduled me for this CAT scan on today's the 9th, on the 12th, this Wednesday. So I'm waiting with bated breath. But to wrap up my story here is, you're calling me on the 3rd, or you're calling me on the 30th at 3 p.m. to tell me I've been canceled. I get a voicemail an hour and a half later telling me I'm accepted. What if this was a life and death thing? You know, what if I keeled over because I didn't get my? So yeah, I don't understand. And yeah, the hospitals will not, in many instances like this is not an emergency room thing. If you don't have insurance, they're not going to talk to you because they want to get paid. You know, now I don't know how much a CAT scan costs, but I know it's not like hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Yeah, it sucks. But I don't know your answer, Martin. I don't know why health costs have skyrocketed in this country, when you would think that some surgical procedures have gotten easier and less time consuming. Correct?
Right. Or things like specifically like MRIs, right? Like I thought by now you could go to an MRI place, pay $25 and walk out with an MRI that you just take to your doctor with you, because there'd be so much downward pressure on that price from how much the insurance would want to see an MRI. Like, to me, it's just ridiculous that MRI is not something that the insurance just immediately sends you to do. It should be so cheap and so required for like decision-making purposes that insurance would just rubber stamp it, and the downward pressure on the price would make it really, really cheap. But it's not. Like, my MRIs now are more expensive than they were 10 years ago. Like, why is that?
I don't think there's a reason for, I don't think I think it's like the accordion. I don't think it's supposed to be. I mean, I think it's gouging because, well, again, about 20 some years ago, I was training a family and the father was a radiologist. Okay. And when I was teaching them out of their house, I kicked something and whatever, and I landed on my instep. It was sore. He's like, get in the car. I'm like, what? Get in the car. And he drove me right to the hospital he worked at. We walked right in. There was nothing. We walked right into the x-ray department. Whoever was working, he's like, just give him a quick x-ray of his foot. So they x-rayed it. He looked at it. He's like, no problem. Let's go. Okay. Awesome for me. But the point of that story is these x-rays, these aren't $1 million procedures here. They probably cost $5 or $10. I mean, you know, you're paying the technician's going to be there no matter what. Okay. You got to have a tech on site. I just had x-rays, 3 weeks ago or something. For the second time, they did some chest x-rays. You know, I mean, there's nothing to it. He tells you, stand here, turn this way, lay down, roll over. You know, it's like I felt like, you know, like my pet dog at one time. You know, it's simple shit. So yeah, I don't understand it, Martin. I don't
understand why we're kicking around so much before getting like MRI done. Like, again, 10 years ago, when somebody sprawled on me and I had a bulging disc in my neck, I immediately went and got an MRI, and we went on from there. You know, the doctor prescribed steroids or whatever. Now, I think I told you the story of my friend with his frozen shoulder, which is like a legitimate condition.
Yeah.
He's been going to physical therapy for like months and just recently got an MRI that finally clarified the condition as the frozen shoulder, which makes, you know, physical therapy kind of useless. Like, you just got to kind of wait it out. There's specific treatments. So why is the order reversed? Like, it doesn't help the insurance people either. They've paid thousands of dollars out on physical therapy.
Yeah, I don't understand that. And, and that's another thing I mentioned before you signed on. I was telling Joe, my doctor called me a couple of weeks ago, the nurse, do you want physical therapy for, when you box and wrestle, you do all this stuff, that you're going to have any sport, you're going to have issues. So, my neck, my back, do you want physical therapy? I'm like, why not? I might as well do it. Why not? And that's the last I heard of it. Nothing scheduled, blah, blah, blah. Then, like I said, they shit canned this CAT scan. I got an appointment 3.5 months down the line, I think now, for the neurologist, which would have been pointless to go to a neurologist without this CAT scan. And now what? What if they say, okay, now you need an MRI or you need this test or that test? Am I going to go through this again where I got to wait till the last minute, the day before, to find out I'm canceled? I don't know. But like you said, there was a time when you could, where you could just almost walk in and get the test done. And even if you had to pay out of your pocket, it wasn't that much. I don't know what it is now. I don't want to know, because I don't need to know. Let's put it that way. If my insurance won't cover it, I'm not getting it done.
It hasn't gotten cheaper.
Well, no, and I know that it's I don't want to. I know that there's people that get things done. Okay. Like I knew a guy, Dr. Vic, who sadly passed away. Well, it's been before COVID now. He was a chiropractor, but he had all this, equipment, he could take an x-ray and he could do this. And it was basically like, he would tell people, okay, what can you afford? If you don't have insurance, just, whatever. Okay. He'd work a deal with you. Okay. So I know exactly what he paid for his special machine that stretched your spine. And yeah, you got to make that up. And yeah, you got to pay your rent, and you got your rent at your house or mortgage, whatever. I get that. But yet he was the type of guy that would have been, hey, I'm willing to work with you. I just don't know if everybody's like that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Christ.
Well, it's just like education now, right? I mean, education is like healthcare. If someone wants to get a college degree, I mean, sometimes you're talking like for a bachelor's, maybe $100,000 more, like you're paying tens of thousands of dollars a year, for, and it hasn't gone down, and like I said, there's just been experts arguing about why that is and why they're able to get away with charging so much. In some ways, it's because it's almost become a necessity now to get a decent, like, middle paying job, so they can start to just add on, and because people can get loans, they don't really feel the full effect of it. So there's just now starting, well, I shouldn't say just now, there's been for a while, but there's backlash about, should people be going to college now? Has it become, again, to the cost effectiveness? Are you getting as much out? I mean, usually over the course of your life, you're going to be getting paid better than if you don't have it. But I mean, these, kids are in debt for decades now on their student loan debt. Again, why? I mean, used to be that you go to a community college back in the 70s or 80s, maybe a couple grand a year, now even like state schools, it's, 12 to 20,000 a year. It's insane.
And the interest on these loans.
Right. And so there's like healthcare and education are two areas where things are really twisted as far as the way the market works. And 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 then there's a lot of entrenched, because obviously a lot of people are making some good money off of that. So where's the incentive to get out of that? But yeah, it's I've tried to read up on it, but the experts disagree even how to fix that here. And the other thing too is like comparing it to other countries. I remember hearing a fact that per capita in the U.S., we pay something like $8,000 per year per person towards healthcare, just in general. And that includes people who never go to the doctor, people who don't have insurance. Like, you just spread it across our population. We're, as a society, are paying $8,000, where I think in other industrialized nations, it's something like $3,000, And are we getting that much better out of our healthcare system than them? You know, it's arguable. I think a lot of, like, if you look at markers of longevity and infant mortality, we don't rank so well necessarily. I mean, we can do some super spectacular things, you know, some surgeries that, you know, can't be done anywhere else in the world. But overall, is our society healthier than these other ones for all the money we're putting into it? I don't think so. So, I mean, that's a huge question that is definitely outside of my pay grade, but just there's clearly some things that are not right about the way that market works. And a lot of people are getting, you know, honestly destroyed. I mean, they talk about, you know, people going bankrupt, you know, they get cancer and then their family goes bankrupt for the treatments for it, you know, and there's discussions about, like, they're starting to have discussions of what, well, is it actually worth getting the treatment? You know, do I want, you know, I'm at a certain age in my life. Is it worth fighting this for an extra 5 years of life, but putting my family hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt? You know, there's a consequence after I'm gone, you know, but it's hard. How do you say, oh, you know, shouldn't you always try and fight and save your life and try and get healthy? But like I said, money is food and shelter for those around you. You know, what's the best decision for your family? I mean, our system has come to that where people have to ask those questions. I forgot what they called it. It was like holistic healthcare or whatever, but where they actually try and take in the entire effect, you know, of certain situations like that, because it is a cost on the family. And yeah, I mean, I would think most people agree that the way we do it here is not right and very inefficient.
Well, I can speak on my behalf of taking care of my mother, that the cost on the family is sometimes even beyond financial. You know, like with me, how my life was, you know, completely destroyed in every aspect because I couldn't leave this house. You know, I mean, I was just monitoring her. And if I did have to leave, I was always nervous, you know, like I got to hurry to get back. What's going to happen here? So yeah, there's a lot to it with family. If a family has to feel like they got a $250,000 bill and they got to help out mom and dad with that bill, that's going to put a strain on them. Most of the time, they're just not going to do it because they're not legally obligated to help out. But yeah, when you talk about putting liens on a house, if the parents own a house, and yeah, it gets really messed up. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, I've been there. You know, I'm living through it still. I was at the nursing home the other day. You know, I had to drop off more stuff for my mom, and there will be nobody. If I'm in a nursing home, there will be nobody dropping off stuff for me. Right? I don't have that luxury of a family support system, and there's a lot of people out there that don't. Okay, I'm not unique. I know a guy in Chicago. I think you may have met him, Joe. Cranberry John. He doesn't have anybody. He's got friends, you know, and that's fine, you know, but friends can only do so much. Yeah, you know, it's nothing that you and I and Martin are going to solve on a podcast or anywhere else, because you're right. Experts don't agree on it. You know, euthanasia and things like that. You know, there people have their own belief system. And it's sometimes religious or philosophical, and you have all of these factors coming into play. You know, my philosophy has always been to try to be as happy as you can be, as long as you can be. And, you know, because I was raised around so many older people, much, much older, I have a different perspective than most people. I see how the body can fall apart, how the mind can fall apart, and how older people no longer are the same people that they were mentally. Not because of being senile or Alzheimer's, just they're not the same person. Their character has changed because they can no longer do what they did. They're always in pain or they don't feel well. And, you know, it's just like you could see that they've pretty much given up. They're only fighting because society tells them that they should. And they feel that, well, I can still contribute somehow. And everybody in my family or my friends, my circle will be a little better with me here. as opposed to me not here. But sometimes it's like, man, let go, just you did the best you could, we'll be fine. It's a tough position to be in. Believe me. I mean, you guys will probably, if you haven't already, I mean, I know you lost your dad, Joe, but I don't know the details behind that, but it may have been tragic or it may have been quickly. I don't know, but it's tough.
I guess I'm going to sign off, help my family get out the door. They've got errands to run, but I'll listen into the rest of this.
Cool.
Nice
Thanks
to see
for joining,
you.
man.
I'll see you for your private lesson Tuesday, Martin.
You got it.
Take care.
Dude, I just remembered too, we totally at the beginning of this podcast did not plug the seminar for next week.
Next weekend. Yeah. So you do it.
Well, so next weekend, Saturday at Jason Bender's school, Jason Bender Martial Art and Fitness in Ravenswood, starting at noon. Tony's doing a seminar there. And then that's same weekend, Sunday, from 10 to 12 at DuPage Krav Maga. Tony's doing a seminar out there in the western suburbs. So next weekend, you have two options, one on the north side of Chicago and one in the western suburbs. We've posted events on Tony's Facebook. So check those out there with the specific addresses. Again, one's at Bender Martial Art and Fitness from noon to 2-ish, and then from 10 to 12 on Sunday at DuPage Krav Maga. I think it's $75 at the door.
Yeah.
Anything else to cover?
Yeah. So for those of you who have purchased and saw my last instructional video that's being sold by BJJ Fanatics, that was filmed at Bender Martial Arts and Fitness. Okay. So, you can see, part of where, the seminar will be held, fully matted. It's a jiu-jitsu school, so, but yeah, and that's pretty much all there is to add about that. Yeah, Joe will be there. So, Joe's willing to sign autographs. And are you still allowing photos to be taken with you?
For the right price, sure.
Okay. Yeah, we'll post that too. But yeah, no, but today was like, we were supposed to have Russell Stutley on. We don't know what happened. It's always good to have Russell on. So we kind of winged everything here today. I had a bunch of stuff that I wanted to talk to Russell about, but these are more philosophical things. And, part of what we do as fighters is a we have a philosophical path to cross at times. When you have to use self-defense in a street scenario, there's lines that you may either cross or choose not to cross. And you got to live with that. Or, you just, when you get into situations, even if it's totally inactive, it's just a verbal thing. You got to live with the outcome of that, and these are like arguments, whatever, even if it gets heated, it's sometimes not forgotten, and you got to process that information. So it's all mental. Everything stems from, being up here, how we process the stuff. But today's topics were, we wing it a lot, which is part of this podcast. We should have called it the improvisational podcast, because we improvise so much.
Well, and I think this is, people who are fans of what you teach want to get to know you better just on a personal level. And I think this is an opportunity just to hear your thoughts on other topics and get to know you. I think this is a great opportunity for people to kind of tune in and just get a vibe for, what makes Tony tick and how he thinks about things and what's it like to hang out, how long do you have to tolerate his BS, that kind of stuff.
And I was just about to say something nice to a beautiful family member that you just, it'll be, I've lost Cheetos, as my dog, it'll be 3 years. And, I won't have another dog, but it's so nice to, when you see this,
I should turn the camera a little bit.
Yeah, there you go. Wow. Yeah, I love dogs. They're my favorite, always have been. This is the longest period I've ever gone without one that I can remember in my life. I think the longest before that was like a matter of months, like 7, 8 months or whatever, maybe not even, maybe 6 months. Yeah. What are you going to do? Yeah, come to think of it, wait a second now. Oh yeah, it wasn't even that long. Yeah, I think the longest period I went was just a few months, maybe 3 or 4 months. Yeah, right. Because I remember.
Did you have, dogs as a kid growing up, or just when you're an adult? Or
yeah, no, as a kid, that was, you almost had to have a dog in the neighborhood I was in.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't remember how old I was. I was in grade school. Oh, I can remember that I had a dog. Okay, I can tell you this. The first major dog that I got as a first Holy Communion gift. So I was like 7 years old. So I was never without a dog at any point in my life, from the time I was 7 until I was 40 something, like 40, because I was with Christy at 40 when my dog died. And then there was a few months in between until I got Cheetos, my last dog. And I had him for 15 years. So from the time, and I know that I had a dog before I had one when I was, my first Holy Communion. I had a German Shepherd. And then I didn't have a dog for, I don't know how long, because I don't remember, but for my first Holy Communion, up until I was 40 or 41. I might have even been 41 when my Cocker Spaniel Frankie died. Well, I can tell you, he was still alive, I think, in 2002. So how? Well, yeah, no, he was. Yeah, it's hard for me to remember now. I forget so much, but yeah, I'll probably never have another dog.
It's a tough decision, man. It's a tough decision. It's a tough decision. I recently thought our dog was going to have to be put down because it blew a tendon, Achilles tendon. And again, kind of circling back to our earlier conversation about the cost, it was thousands of dollars. And it's kind of, that decision is like, your heart says, I'll spend whatever to keep this animal alive. But it's like, that's not very responsible as an adult. How is that kind of output of money going to affect my family? You have to make some pretty hard decisions. And by just using a leg brace and letting it recover, the dog has mobility, the dog can get around and is not in pain. So we're avoiding that. And because the other thing is, they said, well, you can get this MRI and do the surgery, and this breed, it happens too often. So it could happen again. So it's just like, oh, I can't. And I guess it makes sense. There's no guarantees with anything like that. Or it could happen to the other leg. And it was just like, man, I can't, I just can't be responsible to, as much as, like I said, that you love them like you love a family member. It's some of the worst decisions. And my point being is, I was a wreck for a couple of weeks, especially because the dog's young. An older dog, you can kind of rationalize, well, they've had a good run. It's time to, just put them out of their misery. But when they're young and have something like that, it just seems like such a waste, and they're so full of life. So I guess to your point is like, pet ownership's like this really sharp double-edged sword where they do wonderful things for you emotionally. They give you companionship, relieve stress, and so they're wonderful, but then there's that horrible time where you're going to have to let them go. And every time it can be devastating. It is like losing a family member, sometimes maybe even worse, because, you really, and and so you kind of know when you get them, the clock is ticking. And that kind of wisdom comes maybe with age or experience of having gone through a couple pets and losing them. And so it is tough to say, I'm going to commit to having this animal knowing that I'm going to have to go through that horrible process down the road. That's a very hard decision to make.
Yeah, and there was other contributing factors too, but the bottom line for me is I'm done. You know, Cheetos, my last dog was the best, and coupled with, you know, mom was still here, you know, and I was taking care of her, so I couldn't have another pet around my mother because she may have killed it, and I don't need that. Yeah, I'm burned out with the responsibilities, you know. After I'm burned out, so I don't want it. I want to be able to just. I mean, I never leave, but if I wanted to come and go, I want to be able to,
Right.
and not have to worry. Especially living out here, I don't have anybody, you know, who's going to watch him or her, the dog. You know, who's going to feed it, who's going to take him out. You know, I don't need to put anybody else through that. So, no, and you're right. The emotional attachment is just, you know, something that I got you.
And you never take me out.
No, well,
You rarely feed me.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing, man. When we filmed that video, I don't want to mention the name of the restaurant because I don't want to burn anybody, but even my buddy Scott, that pizza was not very good. I was surprised because I've never been to that location. I've been to other locations, and it's normally very good pizza, but that pizza just wasn't. I think that's the last time. Now, that wasn't your place, Pequod's. That is great. Okay. Maybe that's the last time I saw you I saw you. No, the last time we went out was after I filmed that video. So,
Was it that long ago? Wow.
yeah, right. Almost a year. So yeah, but no, we'll have to, I'm still waiting for that Thai food with Rick Solo. What's up?
Let's get that going on. Yeah. I will get in touch with him right away because, the place he likes is very good. So, and we need to have him back on the show too. He was a good guest.
All right. Well, then on that note, we'll wrap it up today, and then we'll find out what happened to Russell. This is so unlike him.
I think it was just a mix up on the time, honestly. So, and we'll talk after this, you know, after we stop recording. So,
all right. Well, then everybody, I should say anybody. Well, anybody and everybody. I want to thank you all for watching again on the show. Don't forget, if you can, make it to the seminars, or one of them at least. And for those of you who are interested in training, I mention it every week. You know, I have that extended training here, or intensive training on my website. Look into that, 3-day, 5-day, whatever. Book it, because, you know, you got to do it in advance. It's none of this last minute thing. You know how that goes. It's just common sense. But I appreciate the support. I'll see you guys next week.
take care.